We're looking to try and identify teams that could arrive earlier than expected. Now, what does arrive mean? To me, arrive is meeting or exceeding expectations. To me, arrive means you were at a point and then you have risen your level, and you are now a tier above where you were. And for sometimes you just wait and you think that team is going to arrive, and they never do. And then other times you do finally get up and meet those expectations. So we want to identify here in the next little bit some of the teams that we think could arrive earlier than expected. For timeline here, I think we're talking about success in 22 or 23. If we're talking about like in college football now, if you arrive in 24, there's no way that's earlier than expected because we got every single coach, every single program on a stopwatch. And I don't think we're dealing with windows that big. Danny, why don't you go ahead and get us started? Who is maybe one of the ones that you feel the strongest about for teams, or the most excited about teams that could arrive earlier than expected?
Oh man, I had 4 that I wrote down. One of them you already mentioned, but like I don't want to make feel like this is my bold prediction, right? Because I do think it has to entail things coming together correctly. I'm trying to decide which one I want to go with first. I'll go with USC since you teased it, since you said it. I think the talent turnaround has been pretty impressive. I think if Caleb Williams is the Caleb Williams that we saw at his best at Oklahoma, Jordan Addison, look at what he did for Kenny Pickett, because I do think he was a massive reason why Kenny Pickett had 17 touchdowns, and that opens up your offense in a completely different way. The defense, I think, is a massive question mark. But then I look at the schedule. So, like, if you're USC, I think arriving is like playoffs.
Agree.
But see, that's what I hate, the people that predict USC to go to the playoffs. But yet I can totally see why you could make that prediction. Like, I think it's safer to say they'll get there another year, but I think they could arrive right away. Their schedule is manageable. It's not that bad. They got the talent now. I don't even like that it's coming out of my mouth, but I think it's one of the teams I look at and you could say, you know what, they could arrive this year.
I don't think it's bold. I mean, it's a people business. You're still asking Lincoln Riley and this brand new staff to take all these brand new players, get them all to gel, get them all on the same page. And also, as Bud Elliott has reminded me many times, a defense that has not gotten the same influx of transfer talent. I mean, the entire wide receiver room has been reloaded and even improved from a pretty good wide receiver room. You got one of the best running backs in the Pac-12 to come from Oregon to USC in Travis Dye. You've got Caleb Williams, somebody who could be one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. And you've got one of the great offensive minds in Lincoln Riley, but they still got to go and do it. So I'm with you, Danny. What does arrive mean? It means making the playoffs. It is more sensible to say that USC makes the playoffs in 23 or 24. I think it can qualify as a bold prediction to say that USC will make the playoffs in 22, but I also don't think it's crazy, and definitely a team that we should be looking at as one that could already make that splash here in year one, which would be tremendous in terms of what it would represent for college football, because Lincoln Riley's move from Oklahoma to USC was just a tidal wave across the entire sport. That I think that not that everybody was shocked or stunned. You may have been, but we just aren't used to seeing the head coach of Oklahoma up and leaving to go to another blue blood program like that. Then for him to take advantage of freedom of movement, the transfer portal, and all of these modern innovations to how you build a roster, and to be able to do that with name, image, and likeness as well. Shout out to Jordan Addison's deal. You have potentially the modern turnaround right there in Los Angeles, a place that needs to be able to get USC going again. I absolutely agree with you. They are a team that could arrive earlier than expected, and I think they're one.
Will you predict it? Like when we're picking win totals, 9.5. You going over?
Yes.
No.
See, I don't know if I am either. I think it might take a year, but I think it's a team you could absolutely see coming earlier.
They're on my list.
Yeah.
Like I think I had like 5, and like they're definitely one. Like I think you circle them as a potential or even likely playoff team in 23. If they get there in 22, to me, that's definitely arriving early.
So they're on all 3 of your lists?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not on mine. guys are
because of the defense.
You guys are basic as hell.
Yeah.
It is basic. It is very
Yeah.
basic. I'll give him that.
I'm thinking outside the box. All right. I'm going to another Pac-12 team.
Oregon.
Washington.
Okay.
Because like if you look at this program over the last few years, like obviously the Jimmy Lake situation and everything that was going on there was just a mess, and it was a huge distraction for the team. But like defensively, they were still very good. It was offensively, they were so conservative and just like Cro-Magnon that they were shooting themselves in the foot time after time. I think DeBoer comes in. Your defense is probably going to drop off a little bit, but the offense should take a significant step forward just simply because I feel like it's going to be trying to score points, which at times the last couple of years, I wasn't sure that was Washington's primary goal when it had the ball. So I think that, then you look around the rest of that division, I think Dan Lanning's going to do a good job at Oregon, but I think it's the first year. And I think that there's still question marks about that program this year where I don't know for sure. I think they're the favorite in the Pac-12 North, but I don't think they're a runaway favorite by any stretch of the imagination. Stanford, I think they might have a bounce back here, but how big is that bounce? Wazoo's got questions. Cal's got questions. Oregon State, I think, is going to be good. But if you look at Washington's schedule, like it's a tough, I will say right off the bat, like in a vacuum, Kent State at home might not seem like a tough non-conference game, but I think in the very first game of the year under a new coach going up against a team that has that kind of identity on offense, that could provide some problems for them. I think that they should win that game, but that's tricky. Then they get Portland State and they get another tough home game against Michigan State. So the non-con might start off poorly, but once they get into conference play, Stanford at UCLA, at Arizona State, which is probably not going to be great, Arizona at Cal, Oregon State at home, Oregon on the road. That's going to be the biggest game. But then you also get Colorado and at Wazoo to finish the year. Like that is not, as far as Pac-12 schedule goes, that is not a murderer's row of opponents that you're playing. You don't have to play USC. You don't have to play Utah. So like, I think this is a Washington team that maybe, I don't know if you guys would consider winning the division being ahead of schedule. If that's where you're going, maybe not. But I think this is a team that could win 8 or 9 games this year.
No more divisions. Pac-12 scrapped from this year.
Forgot. Yeah. So they're not going to get, I don't think they're going to get to the Pac-12 championship, but I think this is a team that can win 8 or 9 games, which I think would put them ahead of schedule for what people are expecting in this season.
Playing Colorado, Arizona, and Arizona State, plus Stanford and Cal is a really big advantage. I mean, I think if you circle it, like we would all agree, those are probably the bottom 5 teams in the Pac-12.
Be fighting for it for sure.
That Kent State game's interesting too, by the way. Like Kent State defensively, I don't really think will put up much of a fight against most teams, but they're going to put up some points against almost everybody. And if Washington is merely like, if they have an intent to score, but like they don't have it all figured out yet.
Is Jake Haener on that roster? That man does not have. Oh, he's not.
No, remember he was gonna go and he went back. That's what I was gonna say. I might be able to buy in it if Jake Haener had gone. Which was weird because it felt like it was a done deal. And then he decided to go back to Fresno State. So I think the quarterback is a massive question, but you know where quarterback is not a question?
Well, they do have Michael Penix, though, so he's going to be able to.
That's your favorite quarterback.
State.
Isn't that your favorite guy?
At Oregon or Bo Nix, who Kirby Smart, one of the best
athletes he's ever seen. Yeah. Once they just have to survive that game without injury. I think Oregon, he inherited a pretty good roster.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a pretty good culture. Like they're used to winning. I think he could bring a toughness and a mentality on the defensive side of the ball that's been desperately needed there. I think Oregon's could arrive faster than expected. But what does that entail? Is that a Pac-12 championship again? Like what's arrive early?
A Pac-12 champion. Yeah, you're not necessarily playing.
Even if it's 10-2, that's still an arrive early for Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah, I think if you get to, like, obviously they've won the Pac-12 3 of the last 4 years, so it's hard to say you're arriving. But with a coaching change in his first year, I think that getting to the Pac-12 championship would probably be all right. You're arriving a year ahead of schedule because I don't know if Dan Lanning is stepping in as a first-time head coach, where it's like your expectations for them should be Pac-12 champion.
I think winning.
I think the favorite
to
win.
Pac-12? No.
Yeah,
the favorite.
It's close though.
I'm pretty sure the betting favorite is Oregon.
Well, I don't think I would bet that.
I'm willing to say they could arrive early if we're defining early as win the Pac-12, but now
it looks like it's split One of the other books, has USC more. So I'm wrong on that. Tom is right.
Who do you guys think? So I think a team that arrives, I think the definition of this team is last year's Ole Miss team. Like arriving, they were 10-win, double-digit wins, and they still got blown out by Bama, but that's okay. Like the expectation was, okay, program history, like, double-digit wins. Who are the candidates to be there? I have two. You guys have any?
Well,
and I think there's one really obvious one.
The other team I had in mind was the team they played in the Sugar Bowl, Baylor. That was a huge arrive early team. And it was so funny because I was trying to go, I went conference by conference for this one. And I don't think there's only one team in the Big 12 that I would mention. And I don't even have that much confidence in it because Texas arriving early. Nah, you're arriving late, bro. You went 5
You better arrive, damn it.
Early. So Oklahoma arriving early. You really can only disappoint at Oklahoma. Oklahoma State and Baylor were playing for the Big 12 championship last year. We got 4 teams out of the 10-team conference that you've kind of already ruled out. The only team that I would even sniff at would be TCU, where just something about Sonny Dykes comes in, gets the offense rolling, and TCU is able to, catch fire, win a couple close games, and find itself playing for a Big 12 championship again. That would be arriving early. That was the only one that I considered in the Big 12 other than that, because so much of the conference is kind of already arrived or has the expectation to be in the mix already.
So when I put this in the doc for the offseason ideas, the team I had in mind was actually 2013 Florida State. So 2012 FSU goes 12-2. They play in the Orange Bowl. They lost a bunch of players off that team. Everybody in Tallahassee pointed to 2014. They're like, all right, this Jameis kid might be pretty good after having another year under his belt. Like they're really excited about this Jalen Ramsey guy they just signed. He'll be a true freshman in 2013. Like they knew that 2013 team would be talented, and then everybody stayed fully healthy. Like almost all 22 guys played every game, and everybody clicked. So that's kind of what I think. Hey, teams that I have circled for 23, but if everything goes right, could they do it in 22? I think Texas has to be. I agree with you on TCU, Chip, but I think Texas has to be circled here because after you get past that Bama game, and if everything clicks offensively, and one of the questions I would have here is the offensive line. They just signed the best offensive line class in the country, but they'll all be true freshmen. If one or two of those guys steps up and could take starting gigs and play well in the Big 12, a league which, by the way, does not send defensive linemen to the league. So I think it's more doable in the Big 12 than it is in any of the other leagues to play true freshmen on the offensive line. You have to look at Texas and say, all right, Quinn Ewers and Isaiah and Worthy and all those weapons they have, and Bijan Robinson, can they score 45 a game and play for the Big 12 title game? That team would be arriving early. I think I have Texas circled for 23 because it'd be Quinn's money year. And staying in the state of Texas, I think the Aggies too. I think everybody has the Aggies circled in 23. Bryce Young's gone from Bama. It's either going to be Haynes King or Johnson. We'll figure out who it is. They just signed the number 1 overall recruiting class. That team will be sophomores, or that class will be sophomores in 23. And yet I think there's a good amount of talent on that team already. So maybe it's, they're a hard one to pick because Bama's in that division, but maybe they're an 11-1 non-division champion that makes the playoff or something like that. That's not insane to think. I don't think it's going to happen, but I had them, and then Penn State.
Yeah. I was going to say that's the Florida State example that I've got on mine, where we are looking at Penn State as a 23 team. We get the full quarterback transition. Some of these really highly ranked recruiting classes starting to become sophomores and juniors. But what if Penn State takes down Ohio State, is able to win Big Ten is still going to do divisions this year, right? Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Take down Ohio State, find a way to win the division, get to the Big Ten championship game, win that, contend for a college football playoff. That is a team that I think certainly has the talent. And the only reason why I would not be betting or picking Penn State to win the division is because of the presence of the absolute juggernaut of the Ohio State Buckeyes, who I think I'm going to go even further. They get off the bus this year and score 45. Forget 40. We're going all the way. Buckeyes get off the bus and they score 45 this year. But if Penn State wins that game, that is one where, based on the recruiting success, the potential of a changeover at quarterback, or Sean Clifford just exceeding all expectations, I think that Penn State's one that you got to look at to potentially arrive early.
Also on my list, yes. I had to do Big Ten title odds for CBSSports.com this week. It went up yesterday, and you can read it there. And I chose the best bet was Ohio State, but I chose Penn State as a value bet for a lot of the same reasons I think that you just went over as for why they can arrive early. Because I think that with Drew Lar in the wings, there's always kind of that break glass in case of emergency kind of factor, which sometimes helps teams. But I really do think, like I also mentioned Sean Clifford as one of those guys who could be the Kenny Pickett of 2022 in that he's got plenty of experience and maybe now he finally has the breakthrough season because this is the first time in his college career since he came to Penn State that he will have the same offensive coordinator for the second consecutive season and be playing in the same offense. And I think that they lose Jahan Dotson, they lose Arnold Ebiketie, they lose a couple key guys, but I think transfer portal, they didn't add a bunch of guys, but they did hit on guys who I think can step in and fill in and play important roles for them right away, which I think is important. And I think that this is a team that you mentioned the schedule. They get Ohio State at home. They get Michigan State at home. They do have to go on the road for Ann Arbor, but that is off of a bye. So at least they get the extra week to prepare. And if you look at their cross-division rival games, they get at Purdue to open, then they get Northwestern at home, and then they get Minnesota at home later in the year. Now, no disrespect to Minnesota and Purdue fans who will argue that they are contenders for the Big Ten West this year, and they might be. But if you're getting a cross-division rival from the West and you're avoiding Wisconsin and Iowa, I think you're happy with that.
I would agree.
All right, who else? I've got a one like super deep cheeky sleeper. Who else is on everybody's list? Have we covered most of them?
I've got two more.
All right, let's hear it.
Virginia Tech.
Ooh, that would be earlier than expected.
I think not competing for not winning the ACC, but I think that being a serious, at least late into the season contender to win the division and maybe get to the ACC championship. I just look at that team and I feel like there was so much off the field distraction of Fuente being on the hot seat that feeling like it was just kind of a done deal. I think that maybe with Brent Pry coming in and kind of bringing in more of that traditional kind of Beamer kind of culture from being from that same kind of, background into the program, which is what I think Virginia Tech is at its core. Just kind of the energy and the electricity from that could maybe push them forward to like an 8-4 kind of 9-3 season, which I think would be I think most people probably aren't anticipating until next year at the earliest. But I think that I wouldn't be shocked if the Hokies take a quick step forward in year one.
Yeah, I could see some scenarios where Tech wins like 8 games and somehow tiebreakers that, works out for the division. I think it makes sense. I mean, especially I'm pretty down on like a lot of the Coastal this year. I think it might be the worst Coastal we've had in a long time, bottom line.
And their conference schedule isn't a bear either. Like you look, they're not playing Clemson. They're not playing Florida State. They're not playing a lot of, it's their non-conferences at Old Dominion, Wofford, a home game against West Virginia, which I think is winnable for them at Virginia Tech. And then late in the year, they play at Liberty, and God knows what Liberty is going to be without Malik Willis this year. And then they've got in conference, they got BC, at UNC, at Pitt, Miami, at NC State, Georgia Tech, Duke, Virginia. These are all there's no like gimmies, and they're not going to be favored in all those games. But as you go through it, you can't really find a game where you're saying, oh, they've got no shot in hell.
So I don't know if I agree with that. And that would be arriving early. I am like buying the long Brent Pry stock with like what he might be able to be for that program. If he could do it immediately, that would be very, very, very exciting. I don't know if this team is even going to be eligible for a bowl game. I try to do some quick research real quick. Give me James Madison as a team to land in the Sun Belt and make a splash right off the bat. 33-5 in their last 3 seasons, championship culture. I think that James Madison from I have not run or looked at James Madison's power ratings for where they land, but I got to think that they could jump into the Sun Belt and easily be in the middle tier right away. And if they, win a couple games against some of the teams at the top of that Sun Belt, give me JMU as a team that could arrive earlier than expected, literally as they arrive in the door at the FBS level.
I have 2 more. And I agree on James Madison, I think, but I need to do more digging on that.
Sun Belt is going to be so fun.
So much fun. That's my favorite Group of 5 conference right now.
Georgia State, I think, maybe.